Hey, welcome to Truth Suffers. This is a channel predicated on that old ancient Fremen saying, truth suffers from too much analysis. I'm Parker Settecase. I have a master's degree in philosophy and 2 in theology. And in this project, I'm going to help you learn truth and wisdom through science fiction and fantasy. I've been meaning to start this channel, to launch this channel for a really long time now. So I'm just finally pulling the trigger. So first things first, what is this channel? What can you expect? What do I want to do with this new project? Well, C.S. Lewis talks about these 2 ways to transfer ideas. One is the direct approach and one is the indirect approach. Now, C.S. Lewis had apologetics in mind when he was talking about this direct distinction. Apologetics comes from the Greek word apologia, which means defense. Apologetics has traditionally been the defense of the Christian faith, but really whenever you're defending your worldview or your ideology, whenever you're giving a defense of that, you're doing some sort of apologetics. But you don't have to focus on apologetics in order to appropriate this distinction. So I really like this direct-indirect distinction. In the direct approach of philosophizing, you will write an essay, you will give an argument, you will do things that analytic philosophers do. You try to be really, really clear and concise and to the point. Here's what I'm saying, here's what I mean, here's the argument, you should affirm it. And if you don't affirm it, then you have to tell me why not. The indirect approach is a little bit different. It goes around the side and it seeks to inculcate ideas and sentiments through telling stories. So you have a deep, rich truth and you're going to wrap that in the story and Trojan horse it into your audience's hearts and minds. Lewis says the direct approach goes through the reason, which is the organ of truth, and the indirect approach goes through the imagination, which is the organ of meaning. So why do I bring up this distinction? Well, I think this is really important for this channel and what I want to do with science fiction and philosophy. I think in the 20th century, philosophy bifurcated. Now, I'm not just talking about the so-called analytic versus continental divide, the analytic tradition of philosophy being the Anglo-American method or mode of philosophy, and the continental being the European mode. That's a trope in modern philosophy that these two have split, and the continentals like flowery language, they ask really good questions, and the analytic philosophy asks really bad questions about like really pedantic things, but they're really clear and concise, and these two shall never intersect again. That's not what I mean. What I mean is that even within the Anglo-American world, I think philosophy split. You had academic philosophy pursuing analytic philosophy, logic, linguistics, language philosophy, conceptual analysis, trying to get clear on concepts and saying that's what philosophy is. Philosophy is about helping the other subjects, the other disciplines, get really clear on the concepts that they use. Look, we're helpful. Look, we can do things too. Don't throw us out, we're still good. Well, I think a lot of really good philosophers didn't go into academic philosophy, but instead wrote science fiction. And so I've had this hunch that a lot of really good philosophy and philosophers have taken the indirect approach, and they've Trojan horsed really good philosophical concepts and ideas and sentiments into good science fiction stories, and through their stories, they made it out into the public. Now, lest you think this indirect approach is inappropriate or not philosophical or something, what these philosophically minded authors outside of the academy are doing is much in line with people like Plato, who wrote dialogues, who couched his philosophy in probably fictional dialogues. Like that was his method of philosophizing. Or think about people like Dostoevsky, who took philosophical concepts and put them in the mouths of really rich characters, so much so that you're not really sure which voice is Dostoevsky. David Hume's another one who did this with his dialogues concerning natural religion. So using fictional dialogues to get across philosophical points has a really rich tradition that goes all the way back at least to Plato. And I think what started with him has gone all the way up into at least the 20th century with some of these philosophers outside of the academy. And so one of my main goals here on Truth Suffers is to find those pieces, to pull some of that rich philosophy out for you, to examine it for you, but not so much that I kill the story because, as the ancient Fremen saying goes, truth suffers from too much analysis. But I am going to use science fiction and fantasy to help us see truth and wisdom in a new light. I think a lot of these authors were hiding gems for us, and I want to analyze those. I want to think about those. So by doing this, I want to introduce you to some old science fiction stories that are really good, short stories and novels maybe you haven't heard of, and this way I'll introduce you to your next read. I also want to help you look at your old reads, books that you've already read before, in a new light and come to appreciate them even more. And I want to help you learn some ancient philosophy and theology, as well as drawing on some current cutting-edge work in philosophy and theology that I've learned from a lot of my guests on my podcast, Parker's Pensies, and throughout my 3 master's degrees. But on top of that, I've also been collecting some really cool old science fiction art through old pulp magazines and old covers. I have a really cool collection, and I'm going to show it to you guys too. Modern science fiction art is not quite what it used to be, and I would love to play some small role in reintroducing the community to some of the greats. Greats like Bruce Pennington and Schoenherr and Frazetta and Foss and just a whole bunch of others. So as I find really good science fiction and fantasy art, I'm going to share that with you guys here on this channel. Hang on, let me interject and give a little plug for another one of my projects. I was looking back on this video and realized that I forgot to mention my philosophical science fiction and fantasy short story project. It's called Sages, Mages, and Wisdom Machines. It's a subsection of my Substack. You can find a link to it in the description. If you guys like learning philosophical things, like everything I just mentioned in this video, if you like learning those through the Trojan horse of science fiction and fantasy, then you're going to love my short stories. Right now, I'm working on my first novel. It's called Block World. That's science fiction, kind of a pulpy, old school one. I'm not sure if that's going to be on Sages, Mages, and Wisdom Machines, but I'm also working on a novelette, which is a Conan meets the Mongolian steppe type thing with maybe some time travel in there. Right now, I have a bunch of artists working on art for me, and that will be up on my Substack subsection, Sages, Mages, and Wisdom Machines. So let me just tell you about some of the short stories that are up there. I have Finding It Perfect, which is a short story about the ontological argument from Anselm for the existence of God. I have the Mushroom Revelations about psychedelics and also the existence of God, but the nature of revelation and how we should trust it and when we should trust it. I have God's Warlock, which goes over like distinctions between warlocks and wizards, and it's actually a retelling of a biblical story. So see if you can find out which one that is. Mary Saw Red is about Mary's room. And Qualia, Inscrutable Intelligence, has to do with the nature of artificial intelligence and inscrutable super intelligence. Like, why would we ever trust? How could we ever trust a super intelligent being like God or like super intelligent artificial intelligence? And that is a little riff on Frederick Brown's story Answer. Tiger Tiger is about the philosophy of biology. Foxhole Triangulations is about Donald Davison's triangulation argument. A Mighty Man's Pierced Heart is about Benaiah from the Bible, one of David's mighty men, but I sword and sorcered it up. And so it's a great story. I mean, it's already a good story, but I filled in some details, and I think you guys will like that. So those are some of my short stories. If you're interested in that, go check that out. Find the link in the description, Sages, Mages, and Wisdom Machines. All right, let's jump back into my other project, Truth Suffers, and I'll tell you about some of the coming attractions, what you can look forward to seeing here on this channel. So let me just give you a preview of coming events, some things that I'm really excited to be working on, some things I've already been working on and that I just need to film. First up, I want to talk about the Ransom trilogy. A lot of people will call this the Space Trilogy. It's written by C.S. Lewis. I think Lewis would not have called it the Space Trilogy because his whole point in the Space Trilogy is that space is not really space. It's not empty space. It's the heavens. It's full of glory. It's full of the glory of the Lord. But, you know, even in the story, it's full of like Eldil and angels, and it's really cool. It's a great science fiction series. Some people argue that the third book in the series, That Hideous Strength, is one of the great dystopian novels of the 20th century that's gone underappreciated. I think that's probably true, although it's pretty wild and pretty out there. Most people are going to say Perelandra is their favorite. It's a bit of a retelling of Milton's Paradise Lost, but my favorite is Out of the Silent Planet. That's book 1, and that's because I'm a philosopher and I see the philosophical themes that he's bringing in. I see what he's doing with Plato's Republic on Mars. It's really cool. So I'm excited to talk to you guys about that. I'm also really pumped to talk about Philip K. Dick. Philip K. Dick was an undergrad in philosophy. I don't think he finished, but you can see that this dude pulled a lot from his studying of philosophy and jams it into all of his novels and his short stories. I really love Philip K. Dick, so we're going to talk a lot about him. I'm really excited to introduce you guys to Frederick Brown. He's one of the best short story science fiction authors ever. I mean, he can say more in 200 words than most people can in entire, 6-7 book series. He's amazing. And all of his stuff is really philosophical. He's got a really great short story on solipsism. So I'm really excited to cover that too. So Frederick Brown's a man. It's going to be really fun. I want to talk about some forgotten oldies like The Stars, My Destination, my dad's favorite book. That one's a gem. We're going to be getting into Alfred Bester and some of his works. If you know anything about me, then you know I am obsessed with Dune. So we're going to be talking about Dune. There's a bunch of Dune art just all over my office here. We're going to be talking about a lot of Dune. I love Frank Herbert. I love his philosophy. When I think about philosophers outside of the academy, Frank Herbert and Philip K. Dick are two of the people that I have most in mind. Now, Dune was actually serialized in the science fiction magazine Analog, Science Fiction, Science Fact. And so I've collected those, and I have the original artwork by John Schoenherr in those magazines. So I'm going to shoot some B-roll for you guys and show you all that because more people need to see John Schoenherr's work. Frank Herbert said he's the only man who actually visited Arrakis. Like, he so understood the story that even his sketches really draw you into the world of Dune. And then the last thing I'll mention is Tron Legacy. Now, I really like Tron. I had to learn to like it, but I loved Tron Legacy from the start. I saw it in theaters when I was younger. It's an amazing story. So I bring that up to say that I don't want to only do science fiction and fantasy books. I also want to cover some other mediums of science fiction, not just books, but movies and shows and sci-fi, right? So there's SF, which is like the high art, which is like really beautiful science fiction stories, mythopoesis set in space. And then there's also like the popular level sci-fi stuff. Maybe I'll cover that distinction as well. I like that distinction, but you know, who knows? Anyways, I'm going to cover stuff like Star Wars as well. So I'm making a lot of promises here, but you guys got to hold me to it. I'm excited. Thank you for everyone who's already subscribed. If you guys have watched this video and you like it, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out on any future videos. And then I want to hear from you guys. What's your favorite science fiction book? What's your favorite fantasy book? Which books do you think I have to read? And which ones do you want to see me cover here on the new channel, Truth Suffers? All right, that's going to do it for now. I'll catch you guys next time.